Commons. And the presenters here today, we have Luke Walzer, we have Lisa Roddy, Michael Branson Smith, Paige DuPont, and Stephen Real.
And Chris Stein.
Here we go.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. I'm Luke Walzer. I'm acting co-director of the Commons this semester along with my colleague Lisa Roddy, and my day job is to direct the Teaching and Learning Center at the Graduate Center. What we're going to do today is kind of present a broad picture of the state of the CUNY Academic Commons now, with some specific focus on how it's being deployed by campuses in the Bronx. And we'll go pretty quickly through a range of elements of the Commons and then have some time for discussion afterwards. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Commons, it's a WordPress-based social network for the CUNY community. Anyone with a CUNY ID or CUNY email address can become a member of the Commons, and it has a variety of spaces which you'll see throughout the presentation to facilitate communication across our campuses. I want to speak briefly and give you a sense of the functionality of the Commons through specific Bronx-based users, none of whom are here today, none of whom know I'm talking about them. So if they're on your campus, feel free to let them know we were bragging about their activity on the Commons. The first is Jeanette Tilley, who's participating in a project that Michael will actually speak about. This is a Faculty Fellows teaching project to explore what it means to have undergraduate courses run on the Commons. In the past, we've not supported undergraduate courses. We're now starting to experiment with that. And it's been really exciting to see faculty members like Jeanette, who's the chair of the music department at Lehman, and is having her students go out into the city and listen to live music performance and then use the Commons to reflect on it. They're taking photographs, they're writing critical reviews, and the Commons is being used as a space to facilitate not only that reflection, but also she's got a calendar that she uses that has that's of value to everyone. It's a public calendar that logs public performance throughout the city. And this is her first semester really using the Commons in this way, and it's been really exciting to follow. The next faculty member I'll talk about is Swan Kim, who's an English professor here at Bronx Community College and also the WAC coordinator. And she's made use of the Commons in a couple of different ways. One is by building out a very vibrant space to facilitate the work of her writing across the curriculum fellows that she oversees and supports here at Bronx Community College. So they've got a blog where they're sharing best practices for WAC pedagogy, where they're talking about upcoming events, and where they're really interfacing with the BCC community. That's local to BCC, but she's also participating in a cross-CUNY effort to build Asian American studies programs and thinking across CUNY. And this is hosted at BMCC, which is Chris's campus, and was funded by an NEH Summer Institute, but has really brought together dozens of faculty members and interested folks to discuss implications of Asian American studies at CUNY. And Swan has been involved in this effort as well. Okay. A third initiative I'll focus on is a conference that was held at the Graduate Center a couple weeks ago that was organized by two Lehman College faculty members, Olivia Moy and Sunny Walia. They used the Commons to basically as a conference website. They launched and we helped them customize the site. They use what's called a CUNY-IS short URL. So if you go to cuny.is/activism, you go to this website, and the Commons facilitated outreach about the event and invitations and registrations as well. Okay. Another BCC faculty member I'll feature is Cynthia Tobar, who's an archivist here and a librarian and an assistant professor, who has been thinking critically about the Hall of Fame. That for anyone who's not checked out the Hall of Fame here at Bronx Community College, it's a great walk, but she's been thinking about what it means to have a Hall of Fame that features almost predominantly white men in a borough where that features very few white men. and has been thinking of ways to build dialogue and scholarship around that, the tensions therein. And she's launched 2 sites. One is a kind of historical look at kind of visions of greatness that are put forward by the Bronx Community College Hall of Fame, and the next is an event that she's organizing to bring people together to think about it. This is Vyacheslav Dushenkov, who's actually presenting in another room right now, and he uses the Commons. He doesn't have a site on the Commons, but he uses our profiles as a digital presence. He has basically a version of his CV that's visible here. So if you go to cuny.is/Dushenkov, you'll see his site. And finally, one of my favorite sites is someone named Hell Driver, who I think is an associate professor at Hostos Community College. We don't really know who he is. All we know is that he writes about thrash metal in 10,000-word essays that kind of just appear every couple of months. And I think we call him a critical thrash metal scholar. And he's just used the Commons as a blogging space, so it's really exciting to see. So across these 3 campuses, you have faculty members who are making use of every affordance of the Commons, and it's great for us to witness that and to support it. I'll hand it over to Lisa.
I'm not going to add a whole lot because I think I was going to talk about research on the Commons. I think we've hit a little bit of research and we've hit it more locally. One of the things that you might want to take a look at are various ways that groups of librarians, for example, have used the Commons. And so one of the things that I've just pulled out here is the CUNY group. They have a separate website, but then all of the CUNY community has these roundtable groups, and the roundtables have their own group spaces on the Commons. So they use it both for the conference organizing website to be able to collect all of the users for CUNY, and then they also use it, for setting up conversations among roundtable groups. So here is, for example, the CUNY Scholarly Communications Roundtable. So one way to get involved in some of these cross-campus conversations is to look at, for example, to search through the groups feature and to find some organizations that have some like-minded research topics, and to be able to find them, and then you can join them or request to join them. We can also think about research from the perspective of being in a classroom situation, and recently the Commons has launched something called the social paper. We did this last year, and I don't know if they've mentioned it in this context, but social paper enables your ability to compose, manage, archive, and share writing all in a common space. So if you have a course site on the Commons, your students can all work collaboratively in a social paper to do some writing and editing together. And then there's an ongoing initiative in the Commons to begin to build this out to connect to academic works, which is the institutional repository that hopefully will be sort of connect the campus's library collections, so that students would be able to, and colleagues, could work on a collaboratively sourced and edited paper that then could be directly contributed to the institutional repository. There are other groups. The Maker group at CUNY is another group that uses the site fairly robustly in order to organize events at various maker spaces across the campuses. There's one other plugin that does help to enable some sort of collection of resource materials. If you'd like to join a group and that group is really interested in sharing the most recent sort of scholarly content in their field, one thing you can do is add the Press Forward plugin. That will pull together many different sites worth of content, and then you'll have the ability to publish it directly to the group site, and you can create a curated list of content that is relevant to your specific research community or teaching community. I'm going to leave it there, so can hand it off to the next person.
Hi. So I'd like to I'm going to try to move quickly so everybody has a chance to speak, talk about a little bit more about the Faculty Fellows Program, which Luke mentioned. So when the Commons first started, since the platform itself was built by the community and being supported by it, we were really concerned about opening up to undergraduates. That would be just cause for requests for a deluge of support that we wouldn't be able to handle. But with the site much more mature now, I think we're about 5 years in at this point. About a year ago, we stopped rescinding. We stopped saying we're going to ask undergraduates to leave, and some were coming in for a variety of reasons. Prior to that, and saying, "Hey, this is really for graduate students." And graduate students were conducting courses with faculty from primarily out of the Graduate Center, but a couple other places. But with the rescinding of the uninviting undergraduates, this program represented our first formal invitation actually to have CUNY faculty teach undergraduate courses. And so that was very exciting. And we put out a call for proposals. So we wanted to have a supported method for faculty to teach, and we had about 24 applications, a lot of very good ones, and we ended up being able to work with 5 faculty, and they're listed here in their sites. And you can see we have English professor from Queensborough, and she's teaching a documentary film class. Jennifer Corby from Kingsborough, she's teaching a American government politics class. Preeti Kanakamindala, who's right here, teaching an African American history class. Andy Silva from my college, York, teaching technologies of reading, and finally Jeanette Tilley, who Luke had mentioned, teaching a music course. And I thought I'd just show you a couple things that they've been up to, so you can get a sense of what it's like to basically run a course through a blog. 3 out of the 5 are also using groups. Groups are good tools for communication as well as hosting discussion, though you don't necessarily have to use them. For all of them, the course blog seems to be the core through which they're running their class. So in this particular instructor, you'll see kind of very familiar types of things like syllabi, instructions, but it's typically most interesting to kind of give a glance at the the blog itself. And one of the things to note is, so these are simple short answers. She was having prompts for people responding to the films they were watching, but there is some discourse that's going on beyond just their point. And so you can see, for example, these are people's more extended, students' extended response, as well as the professor to the particular posting about a course. But then you have people like Andy, she's running a course that is about the technologies of reading, which presented a really interesting opportunity to have the students themselves look at things like, for example, one of the early blogs was dead technologies. And so the students themselves were doing, investigating their old technologies, but the video, they were to do a response actually in a video. Some would post locally, others would post on YouTube. I'm not going to open it right now. As well, she had students, is it in this one? And she's done a wonderful job actually categorizing all this. So she's having them investigate methods of, doing responses through tools like Google Maps with the support, I don't remember the specific tool that allows you to use the Google Map API. And so this student, Brandon's writing is effectively contextualized within the map itself on Watling Street and a piece of history, and you're seeing it with the location. So these other methods of effectively recontextualizing the essay within these spaces. I think that's enough, but and they're doing some other interesting. One of the other faculty members, Preeti, actually has a blog that's completely private. So if faculty had particular concerns about having posts being public, the entire blog is not accessible without a username or password. As well as Jeanette Tilley has a combination of both. She has the public responses to all the music performances that they're going to, and embedding media and these nice discussions below it. But she also has these private posts that are used for listening responses, and they're just seen by Janet. All right, so there's all these options, and so the big part of the program was that we were able to support. It's primarily Luke, myself, but most importantly, a graduate student named Lori Herson, who's been incredible, and working with 5 faculty members on how to make best advantage of the WordPress platform, plugins, and connections to their interests in extending their students' work beyond just straightforward writing. And then ultimately, the last thing they're going to be doing is they're going to be writing a summarization and blogging about, at some point, their experience, so that they can become, in a sense, not just advocates, but experienced instructors to a point where they can talk about what opportunities you might, if you're interested to teach on the Commons at the undergraduate level. And I imagine, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to run this program again, right? Thanks. I don't know who's next.
So what I was asked what Chris and I are doing, with all of these great things that are happening in the Commons, how do we invite more people to join? And the first, so I wish we could say it's as simple as just making a really nice invitation page, but that's not really the case. What we had to look at was what avenues are people coming in from, and what avenues are we allowing people to come in from. So we looked at all of these ways, and there's 4 different unique user types of getting into the Commons. So we tried to create a singular platform that was simple and thorough, which is really difficult when you have all of these great features. We have sites, groups, blogs, all of these things where we can invite people. So what we wanted to do was make it very easy for people to feel welcome and invited into the Commons. So there's just a lot of things that we had to look at, just language, we've had to look at different user experiences. So in order to do this well, we have to provide a great platform for the people we're already serving. We can't just think about the people we have to reach, we have to talk about and think about the people that we currently are working with. So you can do that.
Right, yeah, so it involves both, one of the first pieces we looked at is the sort of invitation experience. So if you're trying to invite people to the Commons, how do you do that? Also, I think the renewed focus on that was because we've started to allow more people to teach on the Commons. And so we have more likely that someone might invite a larger number of people at a time to a group or a site. And also, we currently don't have a way to invite people to a site. If that's all you're going to do is blog for your class and not have a group, that as well. So we started with that, and then we're also going to be looking and working on the emails that people get, and the process you get once you, decide to join the Commons and how to get on there. And as Paige said, one of the interesting difficulties is that we have this variety of different use cases that people have. Some people might be inviting just their friend, but then that one might invite someone to 7 different groups because they want to get them to join everything. And that might be someone who's teaching class who invites a bunch of people to one thing. So it has to accommodate sort of all of that. And then also accommodate different types of people joining them when they're joining that they have a good experience coming in as well. Traditionally,
So we're in like a beta mode right now. We're testing out, we're wireframing and mocking up one unique experience for all of these different people on different platforms. So it's very new. But the thing is, what we're trying to do overall is make people give a good first impression. Because that's all you got. You've only got one shot to give a good impression. So when you invite someone, how can we make that seamless? And how can we make them feel like this is an experience that they actually want to join? So that's kind of it. And now we're going to turn it over to our product manager, Steven, who leads all of our efforts.
Yeah, I'm here to tell you a little bit about a project an exciting project we're doing in collaboration with the Open Lab at City Tech. The Open Lab is a state-of-the-art platform built on the same technology, WordPress and BuddyPress, as the Commons. It's used quite extensively at City Tech. There are over 20,000 users currently at City Tech. It's used for teaching courses. It's used for project support, for instance, research initiatives or committee assignments. It's also used for clubs. who create shared spaces for people who share their interests. And it's also home to a large number of electronic portfolios for students, as well as teaching and professional portfolios for faculty and staff. Open Lab, since it was launched in 2011, the City Tech folks have gotten a number of requests from other institutions saying, well, we'd like to have Open Lab too. Can you let us have Open Lab? And the answer has been up till now, no, we can't, because it's custom coded for the needs of City Tech. So this project that we're working on, which is funded by a grant from the NEH, is to create basically an abstracted version of Open Lab that any institution can download and get started fairly quickly. How are we doing that? Well, some of you may have heard Commons in a Box. Commons in a Box is a very popular tool available on the WordPress website, where you can download essentially and create within a few minutes your own version of the Commons, which you just heard a lot about. What we're going to do is create a new flavor of Commons in a Box and allow the user, when they download the software, they'll be asked, well, do you want the Open Lab flavor or do you want the Commons flavor? And then use that same framework to create the need, or meet the needs of that user. So we're right in the midst of that project. We're heavily involved right now in the design and the coding. The timeline looks approximately thus. In the fall, in the September to October timeframe, we expect to have a hosted version available, and we're collaborating with about a half a dozen testing partners, and they'll be able to go to this hosted site and kick the tires and take a look and see how it works and give us their feedback, and we'll be able to respond to that feedback, make improvements, and install, deliver a live version by the spring of 2018. So we expect that our testing partners will be able to be up and running and use it in their institutions by then. And given that first alpha release, we'll get feedback from that, and then go live with a beta release for the fall of 2018 for any public institution that's interested.
So with that, we have approximately 7 seconds for questions. Quick one. And I also like to recognize Scott Lowe, one of our committee facilitators, who also helped put together that project with Cynthia Tovar that I showed.
Let me ask a quick question. I'm developing an online course right now. I'm actually teaching it. I'm doing it basically from scratch, open source, creative commons, but I'm going to do the whole thing. And I have been looking at, like you just said, putting courses up on the commons. So I would like to know, how would I get started on that?
Okay.
Okay, and let me see, what was my other question? And this other thing, okay, I'm familiar with WordPress. I have a background in computer science also, so that was interesting what you were saying that you were doing. And I'm going to ask, how would you compare this college uses a lot of e-portfolios. How does that work? How would you compare that to the Commons as far as a platform?
I'll do that one. So, I know a lot of campuses use tools like Digication, and Digication as a platform is built around, you create these taxonomies around requirements, and students are filling them, and then you can get all these analytics and things like that. When using WordPress, you tend to not focus first on creating those rules necessarily. You could say okay, you're right. Well, you could. I'm not saying you can't. You could say every student has a blog, and in that blog, the student must do posts, and those posts must meet these criteria. So one could do that, but you could just see it as an opportunity for students to just, in the context of presenting work, do reflection and see if that's incorporated into their general practice, and it's in a public. And versus Education, it tends to be less public depending on how you have it set up, I imagine, right? So we're also encouraging students to reflect on like putting their work in the context that is the web, like the open web, and what does it mean to write and read and participate in that space. So that's kind of how I would